10 years ago, Austin marked F1's return to America after 5 years away. And next year, it will be one of 3 US races on the calendar alongside Miami and Las Vegas. So where does Austin stand now in the eyes of F1? To help me, Glenn Freeman, work that out, we have Scott Mitchell-Malm and Ben Anderson with us. And Scott, you're coming to us from Austin. You're there for the Grand Prix this year. You're in position. This has been the home of F1, as I mentioned, for a decade now in America. And what I love about this race is a proper F1 track. But more fuss seems to be made about Miami and the upcoming race in Vegas. How do you feel about that?
I think we're in danger of seriously overlooking the United States Grand Prix's place on the calendar. I think it brings something to Formula One explicitly from a sporting point of view. But then, in addition to that, it brings also a load of Texan heritage. It leans into the culture of Austin. You get a real flavour of being in the US. So there's a fantastic mix of spectacle on track and off it. Whereas with Miami and Vegas, there's just this lean towards hyperbole and just making sure everything is just the best, the best, the best. Bigger is better. Yeah, get in. We're in America. That is basically the attitude. And one of the things I felt really underlined this was a press release that went out about Las Vegas fairly recently. And there was a reference to it setting new standards for F1 races. They called it the most anticipated Grand Prix in motorsports history, and said it's set to dominate the sports and entertainment capital of the world for 4 days and nights on a scale never seen before, and cement the Las Vegas Grand Prix as the standout event on the sport's global calendar in 2023 and beyond. And to that I say, bombastic nonsense. That just means nothing to anybody. It is just about creating this swell of expectation, anticipation, and grandiosity that the actual event itself could never live up to. We saw it in Miami. Miami, the on-track stuff didn't live up to all the promises off-track. I have a feeling we're going to see the same with Vegas. I never really feel like that's the case with Austin.
And Ben, as Scott outlined there, Austin is so different from the other US races, the 2 other US races we're going to have on the calendar next year. How do you feel about that difference? Do you feel like perhaps Austin is the proper Grand Prix? Is Austin what an F1 race should be in America?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, as Scott outlined, it's the United States Grand Prix. It's a classic track, loved by the drivers. It's a great place to watch Formula One cars. They struggled to get crowds in the past, but Drive to Survive and the boost in F1's popularity has changed that. And obviously we saw a sellout crowd last year when crowds were allowed to return and the Grand Prix returned. And that's been crucial. They've got a new deal as well, which I think is really important for Formula One because it's the centrepiece, if you like, of Formula One in America. But on the other side, I think it's fine in a sense for there to be this bombastic nonsense, as Scott puts it, around the new races. You know, they're new. You want to hype them up. You want to get people excited. And I'd like to think there's a place for both approaches. You know, Formula One's clearly looking to cash in on this boom in US popularity, and therefore they've probably got a bit carried away. What I wouldn't like to see is that working to the detriment of the Austin race, which is why I'm so pleased it's got this 5-year contract in place. I mean, if you look at the ticket prices for the US Grand Prix, you're talking about, even for a one-day admission on a Sunday, that's half the price of going to Miami. And if we don't have all the ticket prices for Las Vegas yet, but, you know, it looks like you'd have to remortgage your house to go to that race. So I think for ordinary fans and people who want to go and experience Formula One in the flesh, it's really important that you have that natural access point. And that's what COTA provides, which Miami and certainly Las Vegas just won't.
Scott, I'm going to come back to you because you recently wrote a story on the race website effectively floating the idea of Austin hosting MotoGP and or IndyCar on the same weekend as F1. Where on earth did this come from?
Yeah, so I had a chat with Bobby Epstein, who is the boss of the US Grand Prix, the COTA race, and in it we talked about a few things. We talked about the authenticity of Austin and COTA as a venue versus he wouldn't name them by names, but obviously versus like the likes of Miami and Las Vegas, and he was very very strong on the fact that he wants that authenticity to basically be Austin's USP in the grander scheme of F1 coming to the US and expanding in the US. But I did say to him, but okay, so what would you want, or what would you need to take this race to the next level? Or do you feel that the race is basically at its peak now in terms of what it can offer fans? Or almost like imagine you could just create the event you wanted. That was basically the brief I gave him, and to be fair to him, he picked it up and ran with it. He said that creating something that no one else does and that fans have never seen before and won't be able to see anywhere else, that's the sort of logic behind his suggestion. So he wasn't saying, okay, well, I have made this proposal to Stefano Domenicali and we're going to try and have IndyCar on the Saturday, F1 on the Sunday. But his point was, why not? Because this is a track that can actually cater for multiple disciplines. It is one of the few tracks that has F1 and MotoGP there. So the idea was, what if you could, if you were just starting from a point of what would we love to do and then work back from there to try and make it possible. He puts it in that ballpark, and he also reckons that Domenicali would be up for it. And based on the other stuff that Domenicali wants F1 to review, I would absolutely believe that F1 would consider this. So yeah, I put an asterisk against that proposal in the sense that it's not something that Bobby Epstein and the people at COTA are lobbying F1 for, but it's that sort of grander, wider thinking that says, well, actually, theoretically, could we do this? Well, we'd be up for it. So let's sort of throw that idea out there and see how well it's received.
I'm sure Stefano Domenicali would be up for MotoGP and IndyCar on the same weekend as F1. I mean, who wouldn't? I think we'd all like to see that, but I've got a couple of issues with that as an idea. It seems like maybe Epstein is drifting into the sort of bombast that we've been criticising Miami and Vegas for. You know, we're talking about COTA as the authentic Formula One race in the US. So having these kind of gimmicks to try and make it even bigger and better seems unnecessary to me. But also, I mean, are those series going to want to play second or third fiddle to Formula One? These are major championships in their own right. Obviously, IndyCar is the biggest single-seater series in America. MotoGP is the biggest thing on two wheels. Packing all of that into one arena would be fun, but I'm not sure they're going to like it. Practically, it raises problems, and it's going to jack the price of the tickets up as well, because you can't keep COTA as a kind of low entry point for Formula One fans if you're putting on these massive support races. So I think a more sensible approach would be to do something that's maybe a bit more fun, kind of like what Mexico are doing, having this race for ex-IndyCar champ car racers in V8 stock cars. Something that harks back to a previous era, something that's unusual, but then doesn't detract or cause controversy from the main event.
Well, if I was given a choice between the bombast of MotoGP or IndyCar supporting F1 or the bombast of that press release Scott read out again from Las Vegas, I would choose the former every time and never have to hear the words that are in that press release ever again.